Hey, y'all, thank you for the feedback. Appreciate it. You want to do Exodus? Let's do it. Let's get into it. So, Exodus is the second book in the Bible. What in the world is it about? It's about the redemption of the Israelites out of Egypt. More importantly, as importantly, it's about God identifying himself through a community of people. That's what's going to happen. So, keep that in mind. As you leave Genesis, what you should have in mind is that the promise is the thing that's keeping the story together, not the morality. It's not a bunch of moral tales in Genesis. It's the promise of the seed, the promise of the Messiah. This is the thing that's holding the story together. This is the story, really. So that said, we can deal with some of the morality and just the complications and inconsistencies of the relationships and marriages and things like that later. But the point is, the Messiah, the promise, the prophecy, the seed, all of these things are the same thing. And that's what Genesis is getting at. You're getting at, okay, here's the problem. This is the problem. Sin enters the world. The solution is the seed. The seed is going to be the solution. Where should I look for the seed? I should look for him out of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, particularly Judah. He's coming out of Judah. And that's what you come to understand at the end of Genesis. Messiah is coming out of Judah. Okay, that said, you go to Exodus. Exodus is Israel has been in Egypt for a while. Remember, Joseph had risen to power in Egypt. He had kind of harbored and given his family, the tribes, a safe place to live in Egypt, in Goshen. And so they were prospering and flourishing there in Egypt. And a couple generations later, this Pharaoh shows up, and he does not know Joseph. He doesn't care who Joseph is. And he is antagonistic to Israel. Why? Think of it this way. Israel is pregnant with the promise. These are the people that are carrying the promise of God. These are the people that are carrying the Messiah. These are the people that are carrying the seed. All the same things. This promise, this pregnancy, is going to have implications on the relationships that Israel has with the rest of the world, particularly at this time with Egypt. Egypt is threatened by Israel. And so you'll know this is called, in the New Testament, the afflictions of Christ. And so Hebrews calls it that in Hebrews 11. Anyway, so Pharaoh shows up. This Pharaoh, he is antagonistic. He wants to get rid of Israel, or at least hamstring him. So he does his best to do that. He tries to get all the male children killed. The problem is his health department is not on board with this. And so the nurses are making excuses on why they can't do this, why they cannot get rid of the male children. And so as they do this, Pharaoh is not completing the goal he has set before him. And he is becoming angrier and angrier, and Israel's multiplying more and more. And so finally to the point that the bondage and the slavery that Egypt has put Israel under, just out of hatred, a deliverer shows up. And in the very early stages of Exodus, this deliverer is named Moses. He's not from Judah. He's not going to be the Messiah. However, he's going to be a deliverer. And you're given a little bit about his birth, about his parents' faithfulness, and his kind of call to and equipping for the ministry that he's going to participate in, and the leadership of the nation, and how the Spirit of God's going to use him. And that was early on in Exodus. So Moses approaches Pharaoh after you're given all this biographical information about Moses. Moses approaches Pharaoh, says, "Let my people go so they can go and worship God freely." And Pharaoh doesn't want to do that. Keep in mind this also. Egypt was full of cowboys. They love their cattle. They love cows. They hate sheep. They hate shepherds. And so I don't know if they thought they stunk or whatever the deal was, but they hate shepherds. They hate sheep. They love cattle. They love cows. And so part of this, they're going to run into some problems when they're told to sacrifice a lamb for the firstborn because Egypt is not into lambs. We'll deal with that in Exodus 12. So anyway, Moses goes to Pharaoh, let my people go, let my people go. You get the plagues on the nation that essentially just hobble the economy of the nation. And Pharaoh is just reluctant to let him go. But finally, he says, okay, go. He takes it back several times. On the 10th plague is the death of the firstborn. And this is where the Passover is instituted. It's basically, if you have the blood of a lamb on your doorpost, death will pass over and not enter your household and take your firstborn. But if you don't have the blood of a lamb on the doorpost, then death will enter in your house and take your firstborn, whether it's person or animal, all of the above. And so the cry goes out through Egypt because a lot of the Egyptians don't do this. And a lot of the firstborn in Egypt are dead on this night. And at this point, Pharaoh is just livid, and he wants Israel out of Egypt. And so it's very hasty, like, get these people out of my country. And this is why you see part of the tradition with the Passover was to eat it in haste, because that is the way it happened, the way it went down. So Pharaoh was like, get these people out of my country. And so they flee, they wrap it up, head for the hills, so to speak, and Pharaoh kind of has a change of heart and he chases after him. This is where you get the story of the Red Sea. They go across the Red Sea. Israel goes across the Red Sea on dry land, but then Pharaoh's armies try to chase after, and then the Red Sea closes up and drowns out Pharaoh's armies, not Pharaoh himself, but the armies. And so Pharaoh goes back, and his armies are greatly diminished. You can read some history on that too. It's kind of interesting. So Israel enters out into the wilderness, goes to Sinai, kind of where Moses had originally been a shepherd. And so they go to Sinai, and they're given laws. Moses goes up and receives laws, basically how to conduct business within the community, within the nation, the legal aspects, the offerings, what do we do with the blessings, how do we show dedication, how do we have a relationship with God, things like that. How do we have a relationship with each other? And keep in mind, this whole thing is how God is going to show his identity through a people, through a group of people, a nation. That's why the law is going to be based on love God first, and then love your neighbor as yourself, that kind of thing. And so because the blessings are going to be communal, and that's something, unfortunately, that American individualism has sort of not gotten right about the Bible. It is there are pros and cons to individualism, American individualism. One of the cons is it doesn't know how to read the Bible. It doesn't understand the bigger picture. It doesn't understand that everything is not about your particular destination of heaven or hell or anything like that. It is about the blessings of God being in a community. So this is what God's trying to show in Exodus. And he's going to show his presence in this people, the people that are pregnant with the promise. And they go out into the wilderness, they get the laws. The laws are interesting in themselves. There's a lot more nuance than people give it credit for. For instance, I'll just give you a run real quick. The law of thou shalt not kill. That had, just like in our law, that was a spectrum of things. It ranged from accidental manslaughter, someone accidentally is killed in some work accident or something, or to intentional murder. And so there's a range and a range of punishments associated with those things. So they weren't all equal. All sin is not equal, and that's a myth that people have, but it's not reality. Punishment should fit the crime is the idea. And so all sin is not the same sin. You stealing a piece of bubble gum is not the same as raping children. That's not the same thing. So horrible to say, but that you get the point. It's one of those myths that just plagues evangelical Christianity. So anyway, they get the law. The law is pretty nuanced. It's got some cases. It's got like 23, I think, cases in it that explain in further detail how to apply the law. And then Moses goes back up, and he's going to get the architecture for the tabernacle, for the building. He's going to get all of the priestly garments, all of these things that are going to be associated with carrying the presence of God, and essentially decking out the tabernacle kind of like a palace for a king, overlaying everything in gold, yada yada, all those things. And so he goes up there, and he's not up there very long in Mount Sinai, and the people immediately, they build a calf. What are we doing? What are we doing? So they build this golden calf, and it shows that absence of somebody to lead them, they're going to just do whatever they're going to do. So they build this calf. Moses comes back down the mountain. He's like, what are we doing? What's going on? At this point in time, the Levites are separated because they're the ones that stand for righteousness. They are separated as the priesthood, the defenders of righteousness, so to speak. And so several thousand Israelites die in all this, and Moses goes back up, gets more architecture information, comes back down. They take up an offering to put the tabernacle together, and they start putting it together. And so that is the end of Exodus, is the presence of God in the tabernacle, in this mobile tent that is going to be traveling the wilderness with the people. So the presence of God with the people. And so this is the blessing of Israel. They're pregnant with the promise. They're carrying the presence of God. They've been fed by manna. They've been fed with water from the rock. Of course, those things will be spiritualized in the New Testament. So this is Exodus. It starts off with them in Egypt, Israel in Egypt, and under heavy bondage, ends with them in the wilderness, and having built a tabernacle for the presence of God as they carry the promise and show to the world that God's blessings are communal. Therefore, the community. They are love God first, and then love your neighbor as yourself, that kind of thing. So I hope that helps. We'll do Leviticus. Leviticus will be interesting. But I hope that helps. Any questions, feel free to ask me, and God bless you.